Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hmong Women podcast. My name is Emily.
I'm Ariel.
And as you can see, we have two guests on our show today, Jim and Nou Hli. I'm going to introduce them really quick before passing the baton over. Jim and Nou Hli live near White Bear Lake, Minnesota, with their four children. Jim works in transportation management, while Nou Hli is a mental health practitioner currently pursuing her doctorate in clinical psychology. She's also the founder of Visionary Luminous, a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing free public events that promote mental health awareness, education, and access to cultural healing practices. Jim is the CEO of Illuminance Era, which supports emerging and local artists in the community. Both of them have been practicing shamans, Nou Hli since 2020 and Jim since 2021, and they're passionate about community engagement, supporting individuals on their healing journeys, and advocating for culturally sensitive approaches to mental health care. So as you can see, we've got a pretty great roster on the call right now. So I'm gonna pass it on to the two of you really and just to introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit more about what you do either for work or for fun.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We're very honored to be here. So once again, my name is Nou Hli, and I would say for myself, I enjoy mental health, anything to do with mental health, working in the community, working with my clients. Right now, I'm a arms worker, so I do a lot of work in the community with my clients as well, and also just hosting events, talking about like shamanism, new age shaman, even traditional old age shaman, and kind of just like helping support individuals on their healing and spiritual journey. So that's something I am really passionate about, and I think that's a lot of fun. Otherwise, that we enjoy being in the community, like hosting events for arts and entertainment, and just supporting emerging local artists as well.
Well, my name is Jim. So I love music, so I got to the music industry. I've done it. I've been doing music since high school. But recently, last 2 years, I've been working really hard to put out music and work with all these artists and just have fun. You know, 9 to 5 is great, but you got to do something that's fun too. I love being out there in the community, helping out with the community. We had a lot of um, psychological issue, mental health issue. So I support my wife with all that she's doing. So lately in the Hmong community, there's been a lot of mental health and psychological issue where we're trying to really help
Suicide
suicide
prevention.
preventions and things like that. So I support my wife and everything that she's doing right now.
So, our next question for you is tell us about your shamanism journey and when did you begin and what were the first signs for you?
I guess I can go first. So I had my initial awakening when I was like in my mid 20s. I would say, I guess backtrack, like I think I've always had some like mental health crisis and like kind of a little bit of spiritual, sensitivity since I was young. But it's like, and I feel like that's kind of like, applies for the majority of our like younger generation, not like our parents' generation, but going like the first generation of Hmong Americans here and vice versa. So like I started, very young, but then I didn't know I was supposed to be a shaman until I was in my mid 20s. And it's just, when it hit me pretty hard and, just had a lot of like, onset of like psychological crisis and also like physical pain as well, and that wouldn't go away. And that was just, it just kept getting worse until I was able to seek for another shaman's input, and they were able to do a reading on me and were able to confirm that I was meant to be a shaman. And that was like in the mid of my 20s. And then I think I raised my first altar when I was like around 27. or 28. Yeah. And I believe that was like 2019, around there. And then I've just been, practicing, but I know that initially I was going through a lot of hardship with finding proper seafood who can bridge me with my guides. And so I did went through, 2 different seafoods. And I, can definitely relate to a lot of folks who might be experiencing that as well. But eventually I was able to, get my journey started and start actively performing rituals and, healing ceremonies. And I've been doing it since. So
Well, I mean, for me, I didn't believe in it at the beginning. I'm more of a science guy. I supported her, but eventually we got to a point where weird things kept happening, and then one of the master said that, you guys both are, a couple of shamans. So, and then that triggered into, my awakening, and then that was the pinnacle of our awakening. So I kind of started after her. Um, she still do most of the work. I uh I do. People don't ask me much because I don't like really. I'll go out there and say, I'm a shaman, but I can do certain things. Yeah, that's how we all got started.
Well, thanks for sharing. I've always wondered too, because you both are shamans, like how does that affect your relationship?
yeah, that's a good question. So thank you for asking that. So yeah, 19 goes. So, it's like we're a couple that's like meant to be together and rise as shamans too. Like one will follow after another. So we did have, another like shaman did confirm that as well. And, initially I think that explained a lot of things for us, because like when we've been together for about 16 years, and our relationship has always been really rocky. And there's like, just to be transparent, like there's a lot of like we've had a history of violence, and a lot of couples who go through a shamanic journey where they're meant to rise as shamans, like they do go through a lot of like issues, right? A lot of issues, a lot of marital or relationship issues. And just you know the picture cho you, the cho like you go you she gay, or you cho you go you she tao, so we went through a lot of like hardship. And once we hit that point where in our life where we're like, okay, we accept our journey, and we like went on our spiritual journey, that's when like, yeah, it did escalate it, but then it was meant as like a test. And once we like ổn định tù rồi nè, then 一起是给，一起重新到，等等要给我能读一点，个这里只莫考个啥新嘅，个出莫考个啥新到呢，这个路呢，你这里 like calmer and 你这里读. So it does, happens to the best of us and a lot of us, unfortunately. So, if that's the case and it applies to some of you out there, like just seek for help, and just knowing that like there's a possibility that it could be spiritual stuff that's kind of like
Yeah, no, that's very helpful.
I mean, like, she said it all. We it's like a lot of like the issue in the Hmong community has a lot to do with like cloning and stuff like that. So mentally, like this new generation is not physical anymore. It's more of like mental, seeking mental help, and really like awaken your spiritual journey to really understand yourself, so that you can actually start living instead of like always like who wants to argue all the time, right? I mean, like, we just want to grow and be happy, and do all the things that we love. We don't want to like always argue. So I mean, at the end of the day, it helped us a lot. This journey's taught us a lot.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing. I imagine too, like if my partner were to become a shaman first and then I were to follow, that'd be a lot of support for me. But for both of you, like, did you guys have a lot of support friend-wise, family-wise, and with each other?
Kinda, sorta.
Well, I mean, to answer your question, not really. We didn't have a lot of support with our families just because like our both of our families are very like traditional, you know, still practice like, you know, yeah, traditional ancestral ways, right? So just like a lot of our Hmong families, you know. And I think like because we're more like newer age, you know, and so I think that that was a lot of like conflict because it was very conflicting just because like it's very new to them and they don't believe that yeah, you know, we are actually shamans, you know, right? So like we did get a lot of like backlash from that too. And um you know, it was really hard initially starting and it was just like mostly just us supporting each other, you know. And okay, you name game, you know, eventually look bought out there. Oh, you know, you are going out there in the community, you are very like active and like you call kind of people, but then there's still that kind of like inner belief that they're oh, you know, like kind of skepticism, like oh, they might not be actual like real shamans. So we do get a lot of that.
I mean, the older generation, yes. But we do get a lot of support from like, you know, the like the cousins and the nieces. They do come out and help, or like they do come out and support. So like the younger, like like the people around our age, they support. It's just the older generation that they don't see eye to eye. So it's like, but it's okay, you know, at the end of the day, as long as, you know, you feel better. Like it doesn't matter what you do in life, as long as you're not you feel great, just do what you do. It doesn't matter. I mean, old age, new age, you know, going to church, if it works for you, do your thing.
Yeah, and I think that's a great segue to the next question, Ariel. I know there's two listed there, but since we're already talking about Ning Chiat and Ning Puna, can you both of you explain just like what is the difference between those practices? Because there are some people who might not even know that there is a Ning Chiat and Ning Po, and like what establishes a difference between that.
Yeah, so that's yeah, definitely something that like, we love to educate the community about. Like, the older way, traditional way of shamanism is like our parents, their generation, and you know, ancestral like way of like onena, where like they use a lot of animal sacrifices, and you'll see like okay, you know, you Oneng, like because I grew up a very, very traditional, you know, family. Or my dad, he was also a Ning like oh right, and Ning Zizong, right, and so you will wake up at 5 in the morning, right? And your mom will probably be making rice like 4 in the morning already. And you'll be up like, okay, and like you'll hear like the bells, like just, you know, jingle belling all morning. And, you know, so it's like, and you will see like a pig there or something, or like you will see them like, so like, so that's kind of like the normal routine, right? Of like a typical ancestral, like, um, for most commonly, right? That they would do that. But like, so that's kind of more like the ancestral way. And they rely on like the ancestral guides, right? To like y'all game or calling they are common to complete that. But like Ning Chianama is kind of more like a you know, bên nhẹ bé chỉ là lo nhớ để cho nó chơi bé mua lại cho tôi xài lo để cho nó là sẽ tiền là tôi để cho nó là cái lại mỗi cho con nén chờ nó chỉ là ancestral nè. So you will see like more practice still le she budget or like the she le hall like you know papers just joss papers a le chi to chia to zu na ya chi to kai to bo na. So they don't use a lot of that and like some there's still some that are kind of like still practicing like in the middle where like they're more like hybrid, you know. They still like they have some guys who are like more new age where it's kind of like an integration of other cultural, you know, practices, not like just Hmong ways, right? So they'll have that, but they'll also be practicing kind of similar to like the Hmong ancestral way too, where maybe some of them they might use like livestock still, and maybe some parts they don't use livestock, right? And some people they might use like just rocks. Or some people are just like more of the new age like us. We can use rocks. We have used rocks, but then nowadays, like, you know, oh, no, you do full fledged, you do like, you know, you become like a master in your own rights, right? So like you get like, you like rely your course now, which is like comprised of like so many different cultural, different like healing practices and approaches. And we don't use like livestock, we don't use like rocks, we use more like just like so I think is the difference is like how you approach it, right? Or like what kind of ways are you using to like actual heal.
Yeah, and I guess to add a layer to that, like I know some older shamans, elders who have a mix, a hybrid, like you stated, where they use like rocks, or even like they cut the joss paper into like the shape of people and they use that. Um, and my question to you too is, I guess when learning the new ways of practicing, do you feel like the new practice can heal, or do you feel like it does heal in the same amount as the old practice? Because I know some shamans, like they believe that it doesn't, penetrate as well as it would if it's chia. So I guess what are your thoughts on that?
Well, like my thoughts on that is that look, we live in the 21st century. We're all super busy. Um, and to be honest, who has all day to really do shaman, right? Like for us, like those probably take us 30 minutes to an hour at the most. And then we're done. And then, you don't even have to like serve us food or like do all that. We're just like, hey, you know what? We're just here to do our part and that's it. And we're done. So we're just gonna take off and let us know if you need any more help or give us feedback on how like how did it help you, things like that. But yeah, I mean, we live in a fast-paced world now, so I think the it's more like an evolution of change.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think going forward is going to be more like that. You're going to see a lot more of these shamans that are gonna be doing it a lot faster because the world that we're living in right now, it's like, go, 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 go. So if like we we take 4 or 5 hours in a day just to come and do that, it's gonna take a lot out of a person's life, time and everything. So
And just to kind of piggyback off of that, I know he mentioned like, how everything's more like fast paced now and like the guides in the spiritual world, actually, they're always evolving, right? And they're evolving at a much faster pace than like humanity. And, they always see what's, coming ahead. So they always have to make those like changes and adjustments. So it's like, okay, kind of like, we're like transitioning to a different phase in our life where we're evolving as like, humanity, right? And so therefore like we need certain different kind of like guides to like support our ways of healing. And to answer your question, I mean, of course, everybody, they have like their own rights to believe what they want, and that is totally fine, But like, just kind of based on my own personal experience and like, just like my own like communication with my guides, like I truly do believe that, yeah, like it doesn't matter. It's like, oh, chill, it's like you can still have a certain impact on people, and the game, don't look at it as like more sheep, just look at it as like different generation, right? Evolvement, right? Like to owning, and I can explain this too to a lot of like older folks too. It's like it's like toy, like yeah, toy young blood na, need to jay nang, need to toke, all no be to like whatever, right? Like need to like toke, ye don't get high, right? Just to move so you don't 这么。嗰啲啲冇做一路上嚟哦，當地啦，不俾年浪啦，嚟先買浪啦，俾冇車啦，俾揸到車，俾冇到晒啦。We can go through like how many cities in just like what 1 or 2 hours, right? And a couple hours. And so it's like you gotta think of it that way, It's like as times are changing, like the generations are evolving, and spiritually we are evolving, right? And what you did back then, like 嗰幾年我一喺度你要走到俾你跌得先咯。But it doesn't mean that you're less effective. It just means that the way you're doing it is like probably going to be maybe take longer, or like, you know, maybe faster, or like maybe you're gonna use cái xỉn bùa và bây chỉ cái xỉn bùa xỉn như xỉn từ này yo yeah bây giờ xỉn khác xỉn đầu tư, you know, so just kind of think it that way.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I mean, as long as it don't matter who you use, as long as you feel better.
Yeah, as
Like-
long as you're helping people and, you know, you're like still continuously like doing good in the community, I think that's the most important. You know, I mean, I think I honestly prefer Ningxi. I mean, not trying to be biased, but I mean, I think just because like, yeah, and you know, we are living in a more modern like society now, and like we're very busy, and like, you know, it can also be very life-changing if you can help someone, you know, feel better in just like minutes or hours, right? Instead of like all day and then you wait a long time, you know. So I think that that is one of the perks of it too.
So why do you both believe that there are more shamans appearing? And is there an actual increase? I know you answered it a little bit, but
So yeah, so I mean, there's no statistics indicating that there's an actual increase, but I think just kind of based on my own personal opinion, I do feel like there is an increase, just because I mean, I feel like, I mean, because the Hmong, you know, like diaspora, you know, our history of like diaspora, and like you know, Beiji, Daichi right? And so, you know, throughout times of like Hmong Daichi from China to Laos to Southeast Asia, you know, like we lost a lot of that. And so like, you know, we got into a certain phase, like I'm not a historian, but like based on my own knowledge, it's kind of like, okay, like, you know, we lost a lot of our shamans, where like our shamanic gifts and ancestral là một trò là do hôm nay đâu là do tu gia nên đâu là xưa nay do để cho gọi là chỉ cho mua lại do thầy là chỉ cho bao nhiêu là sinh này chỉ trong nào, right? There are some, but not like trong hình này do. So it was like most predominantly like the male figures, right? So, and you'll kind of get that, you might get that knowledge where it's like, okay, in the family, there's only one, you know, every soul generation or whatever, right? So there wasn't a whole lot, and I think we were really hurting because of that. And now that like, you know, after the war, the Vietnam War, the Secret War, like we lost a lot of our Hmong people, right? And so now like we come back and like, we're settled down in the United States, and or wherever you may be at in different parts of the world. And now like everything is a little bit more like settled down, you know? So like it's kind of like you heal, you know, show and your like next generation. And now we are like having like this increase like of like the newer younger generation, you know. And I feel like because that is kind of like there's a spiritual need, right, for that. And we're getting all sorts of like mental health, mental illnesses, and which is kind of like also intertwined with like spirituality. So now we just show you know, to protect, to heal, you know, and like the so I that's my take on it.
Yeah, what she said.
You can tell I'm a little bit more passionate about it.
well, no, thanks for sharing, New. I think, yeah, I think from a personal side too, because obviously I'm not a shaman. Like I see it in my family too, of where there are multiple shamans popping up. And in other families too, it's like it's becoming more prevalent, right? Of like, oh, it's not just one, it's like multiple siblings. And it's like, whoa. So just seeing it firsthand, yeah, I definitely do agree that I've seen the uptick or increase too. So
definitely. And I'm also doing kind of like a research on that for like my, you know, doctoral program. And I'm really looking at like yeah, I know that's one of my passion is like kind of creating like a systemic like foundation for like our next generation, right? So that they can at least have resources and actually have like statistical data to support, right? At the application, yeah, it's not just like all mental health, right? There's like some kind of like or how like some kind of grounds for it, right? So then we can like prove like culturally, right? And you know, to kind of like show yeah, what kind of mental health symptoms are people actually like facing and struggling with when they are rising as a shaman, and like how can they seek help, right? And like where do they seek help, and what are the numbers, right? So you know, we can at least like provide more support, like and institutional, resources for the next generation to come.
In your experience or journey, why do you think that shamans exist in our culture or for our culture?
I think we're just more of like a bridge than anything else. Shamanism is not really like a religion. It's more of like a practice. So we're just here to like, you know, be like make the mediator between the spiritual world and the human world, right? And I, at the end of the day, we're just here to really try to make someone feel better, and make sure that, both sides are happy. Um, so I mean, that's why that's what I think. But you know,
Just kind of like piggybacking off of that, of course, like to me, like I feel like shamans, yeah, they do exist to like help heal people and help people feel better in general. But like, I feel that's what makes our culture very unique is that like that's something we have and is really prevalent and it's very strong, right? And it's a very like enriching, experience for like a lot of us who are going through it. And I always just tell people, like in general, like Hmong people is a very spiritual group of people. So it's just like other groups of people too, who are more in roots, who are more like kind of following their roots, right? Their spiritual roots, like Native Americans or like, they have there's like other, people too, maybe like Jews too, they're very spiritual as well. And it's actually very unfortunate that some like other like groups of people they have lost a lot of that history and a lot of those like practices. That's very unfortunate, but I think Hmong people like we continue to like practice and we continue to make it known and we continue to be very proud of like being shamans, right? And we talk about it like it's a normalizing the conversation. So I think that that's something that's very beautiful and very like unique about the Hmong people in our culture. And being shamans definitely will have be that gateway, right, to the spiritual side and communicator and mediator, and you kind of get like messages first, and you can help, people in general.
Yeah, definitely. That I really appreciate that perspective that the both of you brought, which is a great segue to, I guess, like some myths or misunderstanding that people might have about shamanism and becoming a shaman. One of the things that we've heard is that typically, how a shaman in a family is chosen is that it typically goes to the oldest or the youngest child in the family. Do you see that as something that is true, or is that really just like a myth that people believe?
I mean, it can be, but like it depends. Um, it depends on situations. I mean, there's not really a clear answer. I mean, we won't know the answer until we get to the other side and ask our maker and see why did you do it this way. Then we'll know. But at this moment, I mean, there's no true answer.
I feel like that's kind of what happened, like in the past, like historically, Hmong people, like they did have, like I mentioned earlier, like every generation or so, you'll have like maybe a shaman rising, and they happen to just be either like to law, or like to yao or something. But I think mostly it was kind of like to law or something, right? So you'll get a lot of that too, where and then they're like the male of the household, right? So you'll get a lot of that. But nowadays, like the times have really changed. Where we were just talking about, Ariel was just mentioning that like everybody in the household is like now a shaman somehow. And like maybe you have like other siblings too, and like to law to yao to da, like they're all like shamans, right? So I do see that there is a different pattern now.
So
Yeah.
are you the youngest or oldest in your family? I just have to ask.
Me, I'm the youngest in my
Okay.
family, the youngest daughter. Yeah.
I'm the oldest.
Okay.
So you proved our point. I'm kidding.
But I do have siblings who are supposed to be shamans and they might or might not know and might or might not accept. So I know, yeah, I know of that because my guys they do tell me like who is supposed to rise as shamans. And it's up to them to accept too. So
Yeah, and that actually is like perfect because that's a question that I had is like how is one chosen? How does one like choose to rise? Like, is it random? And I've asked you this before, Newly, where I'm like, do your guides choose you, or are they just there from the moment you're born? I mean, how does that process work to determine like how you d become a shaman, how you start this journey?
Yeah, so we all kind of enter into like a spiritual contract before we come, and be like reincarnated or like be born as a human on Earth. So like you might not know, might or might not know, but it might not or might not agree with, unfortunately. But yeah, you enter into a contract and then you're like cái đèn tự nó tao hỏi tao có gì muốn tao nên tự dạy right hay tiệt có lộ ôn nén đầu tiên nó chỉ có lộ gì thôi nếu hết sản phụ có lúc nén rồi nhớ đâu có đàn tự nó này tiệt có show chỉ có mà like start manifesting symptoms and stuff and then like yeah you'll seek help and you'll get like usually if you go to a shaman who's able to see that you are supposed to be a shaman, then yeah, you'll get confirmation, and then that's kind of how you get started with your journey, right? So kind of like everything is kind of preordained in a sense.
I mean, there are still certain people out there where their grandpa or their dad passed away, and then they had like ancestral guides where once they go, then they release their guides, and the guides will come back to the kids, either get to just one person or get split up, and that's cho lo là hai mà lại tia tụi nên xuyên gia tụi nên xuyên lo cha thì lì tao cho con nên có dài nữa. So we don't know. It's what like it's more of how your perspective of life is. And if you choose to believe it, then it is that way. If you choose not to believe it, then it's also. There's not really a right or wrong answer. Just remember that,
Stay
do
humble.
do what feels best for you.
Yeah, for sure. And I know like I've gone into a deep dive and I have one more question before I pass it on to Ariel to ask the rest of the questions. Is, Ariel and I have asked each other this before, but do your guides really determine like what you can and cannot do? Like, do your guides like some of them, from what I've heard, some people are like, oh, I can't drink because my guides don't want me to drink. I have an aunt who says that her guides, don't want her to eat funeral food, so she doesn't. She can't because she gets sick afterwards. Like, do your guides really determine like what you can and cannot do?
They do to a certain extent, yes. It truly depends on how flexible your guides are with you, and for like I guess based on my own personal experience, like I used to I started smoking at a very young age. Like I was a, hardcore smoker when I was like 12, 12, 13. And like I've been smoking until like I was in my early 20s, so like 24. And I kind of noticed the signs and symptoms. They're like when I hit my teenage years, like it started to make me feel different. Like I started to hate the smell of cigarettes. I started to get really bad headaches, right? And but like I was just kind of like ignoring it until like I actually hit like my early 20s, and then like I was like, it started to get worse, and I was like, nope, I can't do it anymore. And then now I realized like, okay, and so like even when y'all people smoke, like I hate the smell so bad, like it makes me sick. So, that's kind of one thing too. And like drinking, like when I started my journey, they were really hard on me about drinking. I couldn't drink and I had to like abstain from like drinking for I say 3 years, 3 4 years. Yeah, 3 4 years, and I did not drink at all. But I before that I was like a very like heavy drinker. I enjoy partying and all that. But like ever since then, like I went 4 years without drinking because my guides were putting me on this journey where like I had to, because I'm an empath, so like they kind of had to like teach me to like know myself and like to like know my zoo and like be able to like grow stronger as the shaman before like they can put me back onto like a journey where I can balance, right? So after those 4 years, it was very long 4 years, but it was worth it. And after that, now I'm like, okay, I'm kind of back into like I can drink again and stuff, but like I have a certain limit that they won't allow me to surpass. Oh yeah, and no funeral food, but I still do just because I'm a little rebellious. But you know, I get sick after that, and then I'll just have to like learn just paper that just to drink to help me cleanse that. So
Yeah, no, for me, I never really went through anything crazy like that. And I truly do feel blessed that I mean, but kuwak, we kid so like even though like they say no, I'm still gonna test it. So that's who I am.
but he has had like incidences where like nu chim nong là hai and so lấy món nồng blua, and then like he will like start like kind of I don't know like freeze in place or something, and like his arm would just be like frozen in place, and he will be hurting, and at that time I'd just be like, oh, nay. So nay y'all keep out there, yeah, be careful.
Yeah, so it sounds like our guides do keep us on some kind of a leash at some
Yeah,
point, right?
your parole officers, I call them.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. That again, getting that confirmation, that's so interesting to know that as shamans, like you still have to listen to your guides because like my understanding is it's a give and take, right? They're trying to take care of you. So
Yeah.
them putting limitations on you is them taking care of you essentially. So thanks for sharing.
So since we're talking a little bit more about your journeys, I wanted to ask both of you, what's the most surprising and difficult part in your journey?
For me, understanding. So like for me, it was really hard for me to like understand why. Why me? Because for the longest time I didn't want it. Like I did not want to get. I would rather just live a normal life and just do my thing and you know, but unfortunately that it became it came to a point where I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it just so that I'll feel better. So
Um, for me, I don't know. I feel like I had a relatively easy but also hard journey. So, can I just explain a little bit about that? I would say the easy aspect of my journey was that like I when I kind of like um it was overcame like the seafood part where like initially I had a seafood but he was like ancestral and he kind of just helped me like just but like he knew that he wasn't the right fit for me because he was like ancestral and I was not completely ancestral. I have some ancestral guides but like I'm not I don't do like the same healing approach like how they do it, the healing ceremonies. So like I knew like it wasn't a right fit. And so I think that was one of my like I would say like one of my hardest part too, finding a different seafood. But then like eventually my journey was easy afterwards just because like I did meet someone, old friend who was able to kind of like she wasn't a seafood, but like she was already on her journey, and she was like more like new age too, shaman, and she kind of just told me like, hey, maybe if you follow certain things that I do, maybe that might work for you. And me here without a seafood, like I just kind of went like, okay, let's do it, and it was just really risky, so be careful. But like that was kind of like able to help me like kind of just connect with my guys and even without a seafood like I was able to connect with my guys and like they took me and I went trans and all that. And so after that I was just like finding another seafood who can bridge the rest of my guides and who could like help with Jakalutana. But when I met that seafood, the seafood was already like, oh, your energy is already high enough where you need to have a talent like me or like whatever like that, right? And I just went straight to my master altar. And so I think that was like kind of the easy part for me, but I went through a lot like of hardship, like mental health. Like I because as an empath, like I feel I'm very insensitive to energy. Like they make me sick. And like yeah, they make me in pain, excruciating pain. So I work with a lot of mental health clients, like I mentioned, and it was really hard for me because like a lot of these mental health clients, they have a lot of, a lot of like negative energy, a lot of like, bad juju, things like that. And so it took a lot from me. And I remember just my first day as a case manager, I cried. I wrote down cry because it was hurting so much. And that was one of my, I guess, some of my dark days where I had to like slowly grow stronger so I can like take on more energy, more negative energy, and like be able to like still stay strong. And yeah, so I think like once I passed that, then like, everything was a lot smoother. And I was also very like hang. I was very scared. So I know there's a lot of folks out there who probably like can relate. But like when you try that hand, so I wouldn't name because I was just scared, like, oh when like what am I gonna do, right? So but it took me some time. Like after that, like my guides put me through, like I'm a dreamer. So they put me through a lot of dream tests and like start to have more exposure. And after that, like I love them. Like now I love that. And so like going I'm like, hey, I love it. So I'm just very thankful that my guides, they understand my style of learning, and like, they kind of threw me into the den of wolves, even though they knew I was going to be scared, but that helped me grow stronger.
Yeah, I never thought I'd hear a shaman say that. I love Da. It's so
I,
funny.
I truly do. Like when the people have haunted houses, those are my favorite cases. I'm not kidding. You can ask, anybody who I've worked with. Like like they would come and ask me. I'm like, I'd be so like happy. I would just be like, oh my God, I will do it, when? Like I will do it, and they're like, dude, I hear people like slamming my door, and I saw a lady, and I'm like, all right, even better, let's go, you know. So, it's like, okay, it's not like me. I'm not like just like brag or anything like that. It's just like my guys, I have certain guys that love it. Like they love to like, I think they have this sense of justice where like they don't like it when like people are being bullied by like that, like, 歧视种啊, right? That shit and like they always want to just, or they want to help like spirits who are like earthbound and they've been here for so long, like they need to move on, right? So I have certain guys like that they are passionate about that.
Yeah, I'm the exact opposite. I don't want to go into scary houses. I'm scared of the bad juju that I bring home. So, but it sounds like you got very used to almost like energetically cleansing yourself and like almost learning how to let go and grow from your case manager work too. So that's really like inspiring to listen to how you overcame the obstacle. And it definitely sounds like to me like a lot of trial and error. So
Yes,
it's very,
definitely.
yeah. And then this is a little bit more into like the spiritual realm, but I've always wondered, like when you enter into the spiritual realm, or if you do, or when you do, like, does it look different than where we currently are now, or is it like a whole different sort of place?
For me, like I can only like talk from my experience, right? For me, when I start entering into it, I start envisioning a dirt road. And then it's kind of like a road where you keep like it's kind of like a runway for the planes, right? And then you're going and going and boom, then you're just going off. So like that's how I see the spirit world, but everybody sees it differently. So
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's very unique to like see everybody's different perspectives and learn about different like experiences. But from my own personal experience, like I usually kind of see it like kind of like similar to Jim too, where like I do envision it, but sometimes they do show me glimpses of images, in my head, and like they kind of show me like what I might be encountering, um, or like where I might be at. But like a lot of times I envision like what is it, or kind of intuition too. Like they tell me to through intuition, but sometimes I see things like in, I don't know, like flashes, colors, because I'm an energy healer, energy sensor, so like I sense it kind of based on the energy as well. So it's kind of hard to kind of like explain, but like, if like I'm like, maybe I might be like one day, and then like I might just see like a spark of like a different color or something. Like I'll know, like, okay, that might be or like, oh, I'm in the right place, or like maybe based on the energy too, or the emotions that I'm getting that's being projected onto me. Like I'll know, oh, that na no shit hang, and so no like lost and the and so like that's how I do my interpretation.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I've always wondered that too. Like, is it different for everyone, or is it like the Matrix where like it's just like a different reality, or a different like planet? But that's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard some people they actually do see it. Some people like, they don't. I think, it's a very yeah, it would be very like interesting to learn about people's different experiences. And I like to kind of compare it with like, that show like Stranger Things. Like
Mm.
going through this portal and you see everything on the opposite side is kind of like just dark and like or like everything looks kind of similar to over here, but it's just like a more like darker world or in a sense. Or it depends on where you go too, right? It might be like brighter too. So
That's really interesting because I've heard like that some shamans can also like they look different in when they go trance. Like some of them like Link chia or they like wear a warrior suit. Like that's what I've heard. I don't know, like is that something that is true that shamans can see themselves in a different outfit, different gear when in the other side?
Yeah, kind of. Um, it's it all depends. So like I've I've had multiple different dreams of looking different. Um, and when I do shaman and go into the spiritual world, I mean most of the time you're not looking at yourself. You can't really see yourself, but I mean you do look a little bit different than who you are. And that's a type of that's the journey that you will have to learn for yourself because everybody's different.
yeah, I think it also depends on you as well as an individual. Like for me personally, I don't really care too much for those kind of details. Like I don't really care for like because to me like I see everything in terms of energy, Like we're all like kind of like energy, and like what kind of energy you have or what kind of energy is attracted to you or whatever, right? What kind of energy you carry with you. And so I'm more kind of like in terms of energy, I don't really care for names. That's one thing is I suck really bad with names. And a lot of people would like they would know names. Okay, this around I'm at, like, okay, it's called this whatever Fati Day or whatever, right? Or like, this kingdom and so that. For me, I don't really care for those kind of things. And I don't really care for like how I look like, on the spiritual side, because I feel like it's just kind of like a vessel. But then like, like I because I mentioned I am a dreamer. So yeah, I see like how my spiritual self is supposed to be like in the spiritual side. I see that through my dreams, but I don't really care for it much when I'm actually like translating because I'm like it's just another job, like I have to go on a mission. And a lot of times I just rely on like my sense of like energy interpretation and like things like that. So for my guys to just show me and also like intuitively as well.
Yeah. No, thank you for answering that. I have so many questions, but I
Oh
don't
yeah,
want to. We
go
would sit
ahead.
here for another 3 hours if we answered all those. But I guess like one just for fun, which we can do at the very end, is I know you say that you see energy. I want to know what you see for Ariel and I like are like when you say energy, like auras or stuff, but we can save that for later. I guess like one final question for me is what advice would you give to people who feel like they might, be rising or they have abilities? Like, what are signs that they should be looking for in order to seek advice? Like, I know for me, like, there are times where I'm like, is this or is this not? And so, what advice would you give to other people who might potentially, or if they are already on the journey, like, what advice would you want to give to them that you wish you would have known?
Yeah, we really there's been a lot of like zoning where a lot of the younger generation have mental health issue, right? So what is it? It's like they'll come in like make you feel horrible and make you feel like you just want to like, you know, go and off yourself. In cases like that, please do seek help. Reach out to me or my wife or anybody in your family that can really just listen and talk to you and help you. Um, and that is a really big thing in our community right now. I see a lot of like friends, families that are so young and they take their own life, and that shouldn't be the case. This is a big opportunity where we can really help these young kids out.
Yeah, kind of also relating to that as well. Like we, that's also the mission of like Visionary Luminous. Is like we do host a lot of these like public events, and we're a really new organization, just started last year. But I think that's one of our ongoing two missions, that we will continue to have these events accessible for our community as well, to come and have these conversations and normalize mental health, right? And also like normalize that spiritual, there could be spiritual causes for a lot of the crisis or a lot of the issues that we're facing. And so you be Shanae, you might not like you might not understand the symptoms, and the telltale signs, and you might not know who to go to for help. Or like we do have like incidences where we have people who have converted, to different religion, right? Whether it be like Christianity or whatever. And they are not really in touch with their like the Hmong like cultural, traditions and practices. So it's really hard for them too, or it could be like maybe lack of family support or spousal support or whatever the case may be. But come and seek help. Come in, like we do have like free healing sessions that we have from a lot of our volunteers. Really want to thank all of them too. And there's like a bunch of healer practitioners and shamans. They come out and support the event, where like they open up to do readings too for anybody, right? And so please make use of those opportunities as well, to come and like seek for help, or if you have a question, come and like ask for a question. Hopefully someone can help you as well. So I always just kind of encourage people, like, yeah, seek mental health help too, but also like you can also seek like spiritual help as well. So just trying to balance that.
Just to be frank, there there are some people who are just like not having issue that, but like they're just kind of interested, and they feel um like they just have that feeling where they just want to know if they're gifted or not. um my take on it is that be very careful, because once Pandora box open, it can't go back. So just keep that in mind, to all the viewers.
Yeah, and I went to one of your guys' events a couple months ago, and I think that was the first real moment for me when I realized that, well, one, I had a really good time and I really loved the speakers, but two, it was the first time I was in a room of like Hmong shamans, Hmong practitioners, Hmong Reiki healers, and I was like, wow, I don't think I've ever been to an event like that. So I got to talk and connect to a lot of other people and really see like where they came from and their backgrounds, and I ended up getting one of the few readings that I've ever done in my life, and she was like spot on. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I highly recommend your guys' events because it's amazing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we really do try. So that you're just interested, you might want to learn more. Like, yeah, we have a lot of great guest speakers. You were there, that they talk, there's a lot of experts on mental health. And we also try to kind of switch it up too, where we have like different topics, because I know that there's just a lot of questions, right? And I think like learning from different perspectives is always just very beneficial and helpful. So come out, and like we have a lot of like healers, practitioners and Reiki healers, and I think it's just great to kind of see like their own personal experience too and their own journey. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and thank you both for creating that space for community to come together and also for us to like collectively heal. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, just know there's always help. So yeah, you, it might take a little bit longer. You might have to maybe go through different like channels, but just know that there's always like someone, who's willing to help. And just continue to like seek for help, and like there will be someone who will listen and hear you. So
Yeah, and the fact that, I love that you two talked about how doing it the old way isn't always what's going to fit you. And I think that so many people might get stuck on that, where it's like, well, it's not traditionally what I've seen growing up. And so maybe it's not me. Maybe I don't do that kind of stuff. So it's great that you talked about, that what's okay, chiatana that people can utilize, and there are people who can help with that too. So
right. Yeah, I mean, just kind of a little touching up on that too is like we have a lot of folks who are like converted, right, to different religion. And sometimes it's really like hard for them because they're like, oh, I've had clients who are like hardcore Christians, for example, and they're like, well, how does that look like? Like why? Like they learned that they're supposed to be a shaman, right? And they're like, well, how do I do that? Like I've always been a Christian my whole life, or like, oh, my family would not support it, right? And it's kind of like you just working with them, like, okay, to understand, yeah, this is kind of the experience you're going through, but there are ways like you can get support, right? And there are people who can support you, and there's way to navigate things. You don't always have to follow the traditional way of doing things. And I've even like advised people like maybe just start playing with tarot cards if that's something you're attracted to, if that's like your calling. Like start doing tarot cards or something. And maybe your way of healing don't necessarily mean good, you're like right? Maybe it could be like you'll be Ricky healing, right? Or like maybe you could be praying for someone and that like your guides will channel through that way. So you don't necessarily have to do the old-fashioned way. Mhm.
And there's also herbal healers too. Like some of the shamans, they don't do all those, let you know, don't let you want stuff like that. Instead, they like give medicine. Like they mix, like they have the gift to like mix medicine and make you feel better. So there's many different types of like spiritual guidance. Um, there's not just one type. So just have an open mind. If you are really going through those crises, seek help. Um, and if you don't believe in it, that's totally fine too. Just make sure like you're doing your due diligence and to respect people's belief and respect you know um, everybody's journey because everybody has a different journey.
for sure. Thank you so much again, you both, for all of that information. Ariel, do you have any last questions?
Well, yeah, I did one last question. What other misconceptions do you guys both want to clear out while you're here? Because we talked a little about the youngest and oldest, because you both are the youngest and oldest.
Yeah.
But what other things do you guys want to clear up?
I would say like, so I think we kind of like talked about this briefly about like how Jim mentioned shamanism is not a religion. And I think that's like a misconception a lot of folks have is like, oh, shamanism is like a religion, right? And like, okay, we're like maybe Christian or something and or whatever. And like we don't want to like dibble dabble in like shamanism stuff, right? And I have a lot of clients who has gone through that, like I mentioned. And it's kind of I sit here and kind of like explain to them like, oh, shamanism is not a religion. It's like it's a form of practice, right? It's like a healing practice. It's like a spiritual, practice where you're kind of like negotiating with spirits, or like you're like mediating between the spiritual world and the human world. And you're trying to like help like, heal, like just kind of like doctors, you're healing like humans in their soul, their spirit, or like you're like kind of like like negotiating with a spirit that might be latched onto someone, and causing harm or like causing pain, right? Or illness. And like you're kind of trying to like, settle whatever dispute that may be going on the spiritual side and impacting the human side. So, it's kind of like that, it's like a lot of people they just believe and there's a lot of politics that goes behind it. And I try not to get involved just because, I'm like, okay, it's just it can get pretty rough, right? So I think but that is one misconception that we actually as shamans we encounter a lot. It's like people kind of like, like, oh, are you kind of like culty or something? But I'm like, no, I don't worship my guides. I do ask them for help because they do help me like on the spiritual side. They guide me on the spiritual side, just like how I guide them on the human side. But it's a give and take, right? Relationship, and they protect me and my clients, and I protect them. Right? So it's like that. And I don't feel like it's like they're higher than me or like I'm worshiping them or whatsoever. So I think that's kind of like a misconception a lot of folks have too, you know?
Yeah, because I've definitely been one of those people, who are like, oh, what religion do you follow? Shamanism. So for me, when I learned a couple of years ago that it really isn't a religion, but it's more of a practice, like you said, like, it made me dig down deeper on like, what do I believe outside of that, right? Because if that's not my religion, then what else can ground me? So I have been in that big spiritual journey too, just in the past couple of years, figuring out like, what do I actually believe? And just because I grew up with this and I have like really traditional dad and traditional grandparents, like, do I want to keep following this too? So, you know,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you don't necessarily have to follow it. I mean, if that's something you don't believe in it, but like you can always know idea that is like a be open-minded. I think that's a possibility that maybe the Gamana you could resort to a shaman to help you. But if you could go to church too, and then maybe do like pastor, tall like what you go, and that helps you feel better. Like I'm a believer that you can integrate many different cultural healing modalities, and you could even go to Hosha and Hosha Mali, like, let's go. And that helps you, that's also another like opportunity or another healing modality, right?
mhm.
At the end of the day, as long as they help you and you feel better, like, it's we're all humans. We don't know what's gonna happen in the next 5 to 10 years. We we would not we won't even know what's gonna happen tomorrow or the next hour. So like, just try to enjoy life while you're alive.
Well, I really appreciate Jim and Sun Moon, and just want to close it out and really thank you two for taking the time today to share this information with us. I know I learned a lot, and I hope that our viewers also get a lot from this as well. Nu, you mentioned that you have Visionary Luminance, which does all of this educational work for individuals. So if you are interested in tapping into that resource, Visionary Luminance will have a link in the bio that you can visit. And then also, if you want to have some fun and you're an artist, Illuminance Era also is something that you can tap into to get into that field as well. So thank you again, Jim and Sun Moon, for joining us today. We are super excited to continue to learn more, and I want to hand it to Ariel in case she has something to say too.
No, thank you both. I've learned a lot today and I really appreciate you both for being here.
Most definitely.
Yeah, thank you. We're very honored to be here. So thank you
Yeah,
for
so
giving us this opportunity.
So thank you again, Jim and Sun Moon, for joining us. If you haven't already, subscribe to us on YouTube, subscribe to us on Instagram, Facebook. We're now on Blue Sky. Go ahead and follow us there. Again, visit their organizations, Visionary Luminance and Illuminance Era. They've got some really great resources. And then we hope to see you again in our next episode. Thank you, everyone.